was where capital and goods exchanged hands. And now the trade is moving to more human capital and intellectual goods.
From December the 6th to the 8th, global business powers witnessed the Asian trading hub's transformation.
Guangzhou is now an e-commerce capital with advanced logistics and smart manufacturing. It's known for its cutting-edge design and its leading research.
We speak to the CEOs drawn to the city's commercial promise and drill down into the innovation DNA. All week, starting December 4th, only on CGTN.
Guangzhou is that in China? It's the country's gateway city.
For centuries, this was where capital and goods exchanged hands. And now the trade is moving to more human capital and intellectual goods.
From December the 6th to the 8th.
Another gorgeous evening on the Pearl River. Welcome to Global Business in Guangzhou. This is the third and final edition of our special show here in our beautiful open air studio. Although tonight it is a little bit more chilly, so I wish I had my coat on. But I'm sure the following discussion is going to warm me up no end. So, as the Fortune Global Forum draws to an end, the message is clear. China's rise means opportunities for all. So, where are the most opportunities for multinationals to work with China? What is the best way of globalizing? And how can China and its companies better engage with the global community? We're going to explore these questions and more with our special panel of guests. Let's welcome Ms. Shunyi Yi, who is the CEO of CSOFT, Michael Ma, the China CEO of WME IMG, and to my very left here is Mr. Kevin Mo, Managing Director of the Paulson Institute's Beijing Rep Office. Welcome to you all. Thanks for taking time out on this Friday night. Let me start by asking a broad question to you all, which is, where are the most opportunities for multinationals working with China?
Well, 30 years ago, most multinationals coming to China mostly for looking for OEM partners. At our opening, Tim Cook from Apple was talking about how Apple here is for the talents, and a lot of innovation actually happening here. I think the next biggest opportunity for a lot of multinationals are really looking at how do you bring what's the East to the rest. So that's what I think.
Exporting R&D, expertise,
yeah,
innovation.
A lot of things, how actually happening here, and then you could kind of export to the rest of the world.
And Michael, you've got sports and entertainment marketing in your career path and in your DNA. Tell us more.
Sure. For my experience, it's been importing and exporting content, into China. So in the two business side of it, we work with the largest content distributors in China, like CCTV, like Tencent and Alibaba, to import, U.S. sport and entertainment properties to the viewers through these networks. And on the 2C business, we, for our sport events, we sell directly tickets and experiences to our consumers here in China to participate in our triathlons, our color runs, our events in China.
And what sort of growth are you seeing?
I think both sides are enormous growth, because the hunger for content, for good content, it's only gonna explode here more and more in China as these media distributors become more mature and the pay-per-view channels become more mature and prevalent. And for China, as the growing middle class income rises, the leisure and disposable income rise, people's demand for good quality leisure products and experience will expand as well.
And Kevin, you look after the climate change and energy solutions portfolio at the Paulson Institute. Is that where a lot of the opportunities are going to be for multinationals?
Yeah, there are a lot of opportunities for Western companies coming to China in this area because,
Please speak up a little bit.
Okay.
It's getting a little bit windy.
Okay. Because the Paris climate agreement, China still made commitments, still wants to fulfill its international commitment, like peak its carbon emissions by 2030, cap its energy consumption as well. Since the US already withdrew, that actually makes a lot of countries look up to China as leaders. And in order to really fulfill its national goal, for carbon emissions reductions, they have to work on the energy sectors, because usually, by consuming fossil fuels, that makes a lot of carbon emissions. And in order to make some changes, China already pledged for revolution of energy supply as well as energy consumption. So, which means they needed more clean energy, including wind, including solar and biomass. That offers international companies a lot of opportunities to export actually, the products and the services to China in these areas.
And now I'm going to delve a little bit deeper into each of you, into the fields of expertise for each of you. And Shrini, I know your company specializes in culture, language translation, helping companies globalize. So how have you seen more opportunities arising out of China's globalization initiative?
Yeah, giving example, CSOFT, when we started about almost 14 years ago, our first 8 or 9 years, we don't really have any customer coming from China. There was also a decision,
now, right?
Yeah, unthinkable. So we mostly serving Fortune 500 companies that are outside of China. But today we serve more than 130 China brands, and from all different industry sectors. Well, all the top brands, Huali, Alibaba, we serve quite many. And it's quite amazing, how much China company catching up. And from really to them, it's new when they're talking about going global. It's not so much just transfer the technology outside across the border. It's the associated, practice, the culture aspect get transferred to the different local market. So having that local perspective is so critical. So we see tremendous growth, and company are used to just going to a few dozen of countries and then all over. We localize more than 100 different languages, for consumer product to health product. So I see this is going to be a continual trend as China continue to rise in a global economy.
And Michael, have you seen your partners in China also grow in the same way in their ambitions overseas?
Absolutely. What she said really resonates for us. I think it's more and more is bringing Chinese content brand to overseas. Give you a couple examples. We represent the China Soccer Super League, the soccer association, and we represent their global rights overseas. Before that, it was a very, very small business. Now it's growing every day, not only to the overseas,
I had no idea.
not only to the Chinese overseas population, but also more and more, the Native American and European viewership as well. They just kind of appreciate as China's football gets better and better, more international players coming in. It has a greater resonance overseas.
So we watch Premier League and they watch Super League.
Yeah, that's our business. We did in fact broker the EPL's rights into China with our partner PPTV. So that's an import, and we exported the CSL outside. And a similar individual example is very recently we represent one of our talent client, Liu Yifei. We put her into a role in the Disney's upcoming Mulan movie.
We all heard about that.
I think it'll be a universally acclaimed story, and done at the highest quality of Hollywood, but authentic Chinese story, Chinese values, and Chinese actors.
Mm-hmm. And Kevin, who are the companies or collaborators that you've worked with who really symbolize the spirit of globalization?
Well, actually, we are, I think, a think tank. So we actually established a platform to get 20 top US and China companies working together to develop some models for low carbon transition, especially for economic transition. And these 20 companies right now working together, try to develop some US-China demonstration zone in China, and hopefully can demonstrate a way, especially in technology side, how to really make the economic transition. Also using energy efficiency technologies, renewable technologies to make people figure, oh wow, this is something you can really get it done rather than just pledge or commit on the paper. So that's very important one. Yeah.
Shrini, I have a pet interest in languages. And recently on my show we had this debate about whether English or Chinese should be the working language at either a Chinese company globalizing or a multinational that's localizing. What do you think?
Well, give you examples. About a couple of weeks ago, in the Highway 101, the San Francisco to the Bay Area, into Silicon Valley. So the old Salesforce building being replaced by a new brand called Rakuten, which is a Japan's version of Amazon.
Alibaba, yeah.
So what they are doing right now is they are really kind of from the entire corporate side, the decision of using English as the chosen language.
For a Japanese company, that is radical.
Yeah, that's very radical. So for our internal communications, to emails, this reminds me how CSOFT started. We actually started from 2-bedroom apartment at the Soho, Beijing.
The legendary US startup
and then
story.
we decided from day one we're going to use English. It's for a very simple reason, because our customer base are largely from North America. But now today, if you're looking at the CSOFT income, so 30% are actually coming from China market. So I think this is really a corporate decision. Where is your market? So whether you choose the English or choose the Chinese, fundamentally you want to reach to your customer. So I do think language is a very personal thing. It's a very a strategy, a thing for your brand. So choosing the right language, you cross the border to communicate with your customer is very critical.
So how has Rakuten gone in its transformation?
Well, to be seen. It's definitely, I think they have a huge, big ambition, in the Silicon Valley to promoting their brand.
Okay,
so.
Just hold that thought, because we're going to give our guests a little bit of a water break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more as well as take your questions. So our dear online viewers, get your questions now for our panel of guests. We'll be back in 2.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
Ideas nurtured by creative energy, free to flourish. As China embarks on a new journey of opening up and innovation, the best of global business gather to strategize. CGTN takes you to Guangzhou. Pioneer of progressive policies. Experience the entrepreneurial buzz at the Fortune Global Forum, Guangzhou. Only on CGTN.
You're back with Global Business in Guangzhou, the last day of the Fortune Global Forum special, and today we're talking about winning with China, and we have collected some questions from our online viewers that were collected before the show, and I'm going to ask our panel of guests. You want to know? Okay, I'm going to ask Kevin first, because our viewers do know that I used to work both in US policy as well as Chinese academia and policy. How do you see the difference between Chinese policymakers and US ones?
Well, because political systems are totally different. In the US, the federal government has its own mandates, but state governors and the city mayors don't necessarily listen to them. But in China, the whole structure is more like command and control from top-down approach. So which means
sometimes local governments don't listen either.
Right. So which means if a multinational company come to China, they usually should pay more attention to the policies from central government. But for Chinese companies going to the US, they should also learn to deal with the state governors as well as city mayors. You cannot just look at the federal things, not just like take it for
Should they just ignore the federal government?
So that makes them to have to study more to know both federal government levels policies as well as the state and the cities. So that adds a complexity for them. That's why many of them not successful so far for Chinese companies. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to follow up because
Sure.
I'm just interested in this personally. What's it been like for you? You know, is it just as bureaucratic, both sides? What's better?
Well, since I have spent like more than 13 years in the US, and also I was born in China and then work here, so I probably know, I have better understanding of the both backgrounds. That makes me a little bit taking a little bit more advantage in working both sides. But I think right now with more and more Chinese students, graduates returning to China, I think you're going to be able to find a lot of talents, people like me can work in both sides. Yeah.
Okay. And question for Michael. Do you see China's sports and entertainment gaining popularity in global markets? I mean, you mentioned Super League, but what about?
I think so. I think it's inevitable that we do see, because sports and entertainment are pretty much driven by the human factor. You know, in the end, it's about the sport hero.
They transcend.
Correct. About this actor and actress, the celebrity. So I think, and it's inevitable that China will have it already have its heroes like Yao Ming, like Li Na. You know, we have the pleasure of doing business with and representing Li Na for many years. And when she achieved the #1 in the world in Grand Slam, in French Open and Australia Open, I think it transcends all culture. I think Nike's Phil Knight, you know, once said that sport is like rock and roll. It doesn't need translations. That a hero from China is a hero global. And you know, we've seen our golf player Feng Shanshan become the world's #1 again, and her international following, people recognize true excellence, human achievement, and very similar for celebrity. And I think what resonated with me during this dialogue is that more, you know, we deal with a lot of millennials, not only in client but also in our customers as well. You know,
everyone
they're becoming
wants to know about the millennials.
Yeah, they are very bilingual. I really cannot tell, you know, a young Chinese consumer
who hasn't been
or a
overseas,
fan
right?
who hasn't been overseas, but they speak English through college education and vice
watching
versa.
lots of Friends.
Correct. They're naturally curious, naturally, you know, contra thinking, and then very similar to a U.S. or European youth. So I think sports and entertainment is a tool that transcends culture borders, and we're just very happy that very soon, I think, we'll see a lot of Chinese heroes on the global stage again.
We hope so. Right, Tushrini, this is again very after my own heart. We see a lot of Chinglish, but what are some common examples of Chinese that are translated badly into English?
Well, it depends on how you look at, you know, the product. You know, we are in. Let's give one example. So we at CSOFT serve a lot of life science customers. So when they shipped the medical devices product the overseas, I think, you know, China probably overcome the first stage of getting things accurate, but still locally don't perceive it as true local, because the content structure are not really in the native kind of flavor.
It doesn't feel right.
It doesn't feel right. So it's still missing the element. So language is very personal things. You know, it's almost funny to think about. You want to be globally successful, you have to be locally enough to be perceived as a local product. And
actually, I think I read the question wrong. You know, it should be, what are some common examples of English that translated badly into Chinese? I think that's what the viewer was asking.
So what the English are badly translated in Chinese?
Maybe golden arches?
Golden arches. Well, I do think McDonald's made a great decision to do deep localization by you know, through merger acquisition, you are able to acquire more Chinese resources, including local talents, you know, local insights and government relationship. But in terms of the name, how the name are relevant with the local. So I guess maybe the good example I could give you is that everybody will talk of Coca-Cola is like, you know, a legendary,
classic,
you know,
yeah,
classic ones. You know, I mean, there's no immediately top of my head how the bad ones, you know. But I definitely think that a lot of time it's just not the language itself. It's also the culture aspect. You know, how you can reach out, relate to the local consumer.
Okay, I'm going to ask the second broad question to you all, which is China is a complex topic. You can talk it up, talk it down, any of a number of notches. And it's so diverse. So how can China tell its story better? How can Chinese companies engage with the global community better? Do you want to take this one first, Michael?
Sure. I mean, for me, I always think, like you said, China is so big and the world is so big, I think, but we always go back to the individual, individual case study, individual person. I think, when China, illustrated through newspaper or media or things that people cannot touch, it's one lens. But I've dealt with so many our foreign friends when they come to China themselves, and when they talk to, when they feel the culture, when they actually meet a Chinese person, and this goes both ways. I think that all the mystery goes away. I think it's a human-to-human exchange, the human touch, and then we suddenly realize we're not so different. So I think the individual, keep it real. I think, and then just be out there, expose ourselves, be more confident of being who you are, and what our culture is about. I think when we are having this conference in China today, but if we were to have it in New York today, I think pretty much it's on the same thing. And then I think people all over the world. So I think back to the individual, back to who you are.
And Kevin, you deal a lot with Chinese officials and US officials. Do you find it's the same, the sense of antagonism kind of goes away once they meet face to face?
Well, I think right now the One Belt, One Road is probably a big initiative and offer good opportunities for Chinese companies to go abroad. But I think for them, you have to first respect the local people, understand the local culture, especially do a good assessment about your projects, especially on social and environmental benefits, to really make people to see the benefits to them, not just economic returns. That would make your business more sustainable overseas.
I'm not sure if this is part of your business yet, Shrini, but sometimes I think some of the Chinese CEOs, especially of SOEs, do need makeovers when they try to internationalize, whether it's the way they do speeches, the way they interact with other executives, or the way they dress even. What do you think?
Well, I mean, that's definitely one of we talked about soft power, which I think is the next biggest challenge for China going global. To be able to have the other people's perspective is very important. So I gave you one example. We worked on one of state-owned companies, Bashore, and so
we shall remain anonymous.
So we did several different versions of that, from the graphic design to the color choose to actually the language, try to kind of bring across the border to give the audience a perspective they could understand that. But I think the challenge is how they can step out of their box, and they really truly can feel the other side, how they feel about it. That still remains a pretty big challenge. I think China needs a lot of a good storyteller. They truly could understand both culture. I think I need more company like CSOFT are truly use language as a power, be part of your branding management. And so I think a lot of Chinese company are the founders are coming from engineering background. So they put a lot of emphasis on R&D, but often not enough emphasis on language and culture. And that's often is build the soft power. So.
Okay, let's move on to this forum itself, held in Guangzhou. It's cost a lot of money, and a lot of important people came, a lot of visionary speeches made. Do you think it's been worth it? I mean, how did it work out for you, Michael?
I think for me it's a great learning experience. Just hearing from leaders from in other fields other than mine, I think it's a great experience for me, and it's a very intimate setting. That people get to exchange views very freely in a closed setting, and afterwards we had lots of time to mingle and to know them personally. One thing I did wish, though, to see in future conferences is more local involvement of the local students, for example, local volunteers, local entrepreneurs. It's very rare to have such experience and opportunity to bring a global conference to the city. Wish more local Guangzhou locals get to experience it than we do.
Yeah, right now it's more like the volunteers just stand very far apart and are too shy to even come up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you, Kevin?
I think it's a wise choice to have it in Guangzhou. It actually showcases a lot of Chinese companies that's very innovative. They are not just learning from outside, they are actually leading in many areas such as sharing economy and artificial intelligence. A lot of very innovative products are being developed right now, so I learned a lot as well, yes.
Mm-hmm. So you think the PR campaign is going to pay off?
It's great, it's great. Mm-hmm. And also yesterday, the gala is great, fantastic.
Yes. Did you all watch the drones performance?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
More than 1,000.
You know, I just found out today
more than 1,000.
that one of the co-founders of Yihang, the drones maker, was actually sitting in this very chair on Wednesday evening, and he's only 28 and a half.
Wow.
I mean, this is something that I've really noticed about China, this young generation of entrepreneurs.
Exactly.
Are you working with them a lot?
Yeah, we CSOFT actually had a project with the Shenzhen government called Shenzhen 100. We identified the riser, which are younger generation the entrepreneurs, and they have a global mind since day one. So your Yihang is one of them. So they're also our customer. So we're very proud serving them too. So yes, absolutely. I think the event is fantastic. I agree with the other two guests. I think that bring only more openness and more innovation to both the world.
Do you think there will be more investments coming into China in Guangzhou as a result?
Certainly hope so.
Yeah.
You know, this beautiful city, look at behind us.
What was the message from your session?
From my own session?
Yes.
Well, it was called The Future of Sports in China, very, very big topic, and we all spoke from our own experiences. I think the takeaway is that the market here is unbelievably vast. It's almost big enough for any line of work, any line of business, and I think...
Is it still very centrally administered though?
I think more and more opened up. I think especially in sports entertainment. I think entertainment, probably by its nature, will still more controlled, but I think especially sports is very much grassroots. You know, people's personalities and lifestyle really did change over the last few years. You know, people from going to, going out and they really exercise on a daily basis. So and that shows both from physically and mentally appearance. So.
Okay, so finally I want to get concluding thoughts. We've only got about a minute left. So tell me, what's the best way for China to engage with the world and vice versa?
I think openness, innovation, those are the two themes of this global forum. That's definitely the future.
And for me, I agree with that, of course, but also human-to-human exchange, more and more personal touches, just to be real, dig in, to really show who we are to the global stage and accept what other people are also coming in. I think it'll be a great welcome.
Mm-hmm. I agree with both of them. Just want to add one more term, which is confidence. I see Chinese are getting more confident about going abroad and about leading something, especially technological innovation.
And confidence also involves admitting weakness.
Yeah.
So big thank you to all our guests, Shuni Yi, CEO of CSOFT, Michael Ma, China CEO of IMG, that's a mouthful, and Kevin Mo, Managing Director of the Paulson Institute's Beijing Rep Office. And with that, we're going to wrap up our special edition of Global Business in Guangzhou. So the theme is tell the story right, have global vision, dream big, but start small. And if you want to know anything else about the Fortune Global Forum and how else we can cover these special events better, do talk to us, engage us at our social media and also on our Weibo and our CGTN live app. I am in Guangzhou, and that background, I'm going to miss it, the Pearl River and the iconic Canton Tower. From Guangzhou, I'm Chen Lei.
Now the live TV show is over, but we'll still continue our discussions on China's economy and the forum with my dearest colleague, Yao Qing, who is the strongest guy at CGTN, and he has been following the forum in the past several days.
as he's going to get out of this one, as Yun.
So Yao Qing, what's your biggest impression of the global forum of Fortune? Yeah.
This has been fun. It's been really valuable and eye-opening. in the spirits of the summit, people have come from around the world, some really busy people. There have been 118 senior business leaders who've come to Guangzhou to spend 3 days here. That's a long time in the diary of a CEO.
Yeah.
And they've come here, as I have from Beijing, to learn more about innovation and openness in China. And it has been eye-opening because all of us, all of the reporting team, we've been looking at different case studies, different sectors of manufacturing within China. And what I have found is, from a perspective of coming from Europe, just breathtaking. Yeah. China is so creative, it's so advanced, and it wants to learn more. It wants to expand, it wants to move forward. And the nice thing is this, that it doesn't want to do it alone, it wants to do it sharing with others. And I think that's become much more clear over the last 3 days. It goes back to the President's message that, you know, he reiterated that China is a place for openness and for everyone getting together.
Some figures came to my mind. You know, in 1999, the Fortune Global Forum, the first time it came to China in Shanghai, and at that time, only 10 Chinese companies were on the Fortune 500 list. But now we have over 100, almost 11 times at that time, right? So we can. The big evidence is behind me. It's behind us because the Zhujiang New Town, the CBD of Guangzhou, 20 years ago.
Can you see all this?
Yes.
Have a look out here.
Yeah.
This is quite amazing. Yeah. This is Guangzhou.
Yes. The West Tower and the East Tower. 20 years ago, the region across the river was still barren land, nothing there. But now you can see, it's the one of the.
And as
you can see the glorious skyline.
That's right. And as we go across the bridge,
landscape.
Wait for it, everybody. This huge thing here, the Canton Tower, which is this. It's an icon for Guangzhou. Yeah. And yes, it does look like that most nights of the week.
You can look at the curves, right?
Yeah. But you know, I'm not a local, so tell me more about Guangzhou, Yunfei. What are we looking at here? What is this most amazing building over here?
It's an open stadium for the 2010 Asian Games held in Guangzhou, which now became one of the icon buildings in Guangzhou.
And right behind it, somewhat in the dark, is where you and I did our trailer for the forum a few weeks ago.
Opera House, which is designed by Zaha Hadid, a very famous architecture.
I mean, look at it. It's actually synchronized, so the colors change at the same time. This is an amazing skyline. And you know what?
So, I know
it's also a very happy looking place down there.
Hey, Yao Qing, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You are British, and do you feel any difference of your impression of China before you came here and when you in Britain?
I've had a few more weeks here than the Fortune Summit delegates, but it's still taking me aback, learning about modern China. Yeah. I think the West has a lot of preconceptions and maybe some misconceptions about what China is. Yeah. Where China wants to be, what China wants to achieve.
You know what? One of my colleagues, Brian, also from the Dialogue team, he told me that the turning point of the impression of the West for China is at the 2008 Olympics. Before that, everyone at West thinks China as an man here still wearing a tailor like pig and the Qing dynasty.
But that went both ways. It wasn't just the West looking at China, but China made a concerted effort from that point to really open its doors and to welcome the world to China through the Olympics. Yeah. So if ever there was an Olympics that actually did a huge amount for one country and not just one city, I think that was it.
Yes, we saw remarkable achievements for China in the past 2 decades to achieve high-speed economic growth, but one of the main themes of the forum is innovation could be the driving force for China in the future, right?
But it's not just the driving force for China, it's a driving force for everybody. Yeah. Because if you don't innovate, your business is finished. We're in a different era now. You can't sit still. It's a bit like if you're swimming along the river. Yeah. If you don't swim hard against the currents, you will go backwards. And you've got to swim even harder to move forwards. And that's innovation. You have to keep going forwards. Yeah. And so what's happened here, this celebration, this focus on innovation, is only a reflection of what the world needs to do.
Exactly. You know, 3 days ago, I interviewed the president of DJI, the world's largest drone maker, and he told me some figures which is stunning. You know, last year their revenue of selling drones to the world is around 10 billion yuan, but this year the number could be up to 18 billion yuan. That's an 80% increase. And some estimate that the figure could be up to 20 billion yuan or 30 billion yuan in the next 2 or 3 years. So, which is remarkable. Innovation could be the driving force of China, and China could provide more growth to the world through innovation, right?
Well, yeah, because China is a good platform, because one thing that I've learned from being here is just how connected with cutting-edge technology the population in China is. Back at home in the UK, well, I mean, this is my home now, but back where I've come from, we don't have that connection with a mobile phone quite the same way as people do in China. That really a mobile phone does everything for you, from your banking to all your live streaming, right? Whereas we wouldn't be thinking about that. So, you know, China has a huge population who are
1.3 billion.
1.3 billion, a lot of whom are ready to embrace the most modern technology. So this is a good launch pad for innovation. It's a good case study for what works and what doesn't. And also, to be fair, China is very competitive and it has that technological edge. But that does not mean that China wants to just dominate the market. It's about sharing. If you take, for example, I did one of the reports into electric vehicles. There are an awful lot of joint ventures with overseas manufacturers coming and sharing their technology with local manufacturers, and everybody gaining.
I've talked a lot about China. So you're British, and we know that Britain is the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, and now we're having the 4th round of Industrial Revolution. So, you know, what's the situation right now of innovation in Britain?
Well, I think Britain does have a strong heritage of innovation, of invention. But I think in this particular instance, because of Brexit and everything else, one can't really talk about how things are in a sort of like a stable sense right now. But, you know, it's not to say this is the only place in the world where things happen. Clearly, it's not. It's not. You know, I'm not here trying to say that other countries aren't also making huge strides forward. But, you know, it goes back to what you asked me. It's, you know, what have I learned about China? And I think it's simply this, that China wants to try. China's not afraid to try, but at the same time, China wants friends, and what the Fortune Global Forum, you know, went to show was that
friends from all over the world.
And everyone can go ahead together. So it's, you know, there's a feeling of collective gain that China wants to put forward, and I like that about the forum. I think it reflects that modern China, and I think that these I think after the forum, a lot of these CEOs have gone away thinking a lot better of this country. If they had misconceptions, but you know, it's also about Guangzhou. Guangzhou itself is positioning itself as an innovation hub.
City.
Right.
It's trying to build international airport center, trying to build international maritime Silk Road center, and trying to build itself as an innovation center. So 2,000 years ago, Guangzhou has been an open port for China to link China to the world, and now its role still maintains, right? So.
But now its role is to link the world to China.
Yeah.
And you know, alongside the Fortune Global Forum, Fortune also held a brainstorm tech conference where some 200 entrepreneurs discussed advances in all sorts of technologies.
Yeah.
Again, you were there. Tell me more about that.
We saw many contesting firms of innovation participating in the competition. They held competition inviting all of the pioneering startups from China to join the games. And previous, I think, startups only focuses on internet, like artificial intelligence. But presently, I saw many startups from the medical areas, from the education areas. And I interviewed one company called STEAM, focuses on using robotics to educate children, to make them understand what mechanics are since they were very, very young. And they are the global leader since the very, very beginning. Yeah. Okay.
And how do they keep that position of leadership? It is about innovation still, isn't it? You can't stay still.
Okay.
And that's
I think that's enough for today's discussion.
I think that's the feeling that you get here. Guangzhou is a city where people don't stand still, and maybe it is that's Cantonese pragmatism and practicality, just to say let's get on with it and do it. But that's that feeling I get from Guangzhou, and so that's that brainstorm tech conference will actually return next year to this city again.
Yeah.
The Global Forum won't, but but Fortune's tech conference will.
Let's continue to be here.
So as I said earlier in my live, it's not goodbye from Guangzhou, but it's so long for now.
It's
we'll
just
be back.
The beginning. It's the end of the beginning, right?
It's
just as Winston Churchill said, it's the end of the beginning. So long, have a good night, and stay tuned on CGTN for every day.
Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.